The judge didn't even hide the way he wrinkled his nose when he looked at my daughter's project. He leaned closer, arms crossed, and said with a sneer, "This looks like trash." A few feet away, a teacher turned to another and chuckled. "She's the one from that motel, right?" I felt something twist deep in my chest, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Not yet. Oski was standing right there, just 8 years old, her little hands folded in front of her project, waiting for someone to take her seriously. She didn't say anything, just stared at the floor like she was trying to disappear. Her cardboard rover stood between her and the judge, bent slightly where we had patched it with tape that morning. She had colored it with markers and labeled it with little handwritten notes she had worked on for hours. It looked like what it was. Homemade, clunky, patched together from soda cans, string, and bits of wire. But it worked. It was hers. I wanted to grab her and go. I wanted to stand in front of that judge and scream. I wanted to make those teachers look me in the eye and say it again. But I didn't do any of that. I just stood there, silent, angry, powerless. Then the gym door opened. Everyone turned. A man in a dark suit walked in, tall, polished, not like the others. He wore a white badge clipped to his jacket. There was something about the way he moved. Quick, direct. He didn't stop at the judge's table or the displays with the shiny lights and printed graphs. He walked right through the room until he was standing at my daughter's project. He looked down at the rover. Then he looked at Oski. "I'm from NASA," he said. His voice was calm and clear. "And I'd like to speak to this girl privately." For a second, no one said anything. The judge's mouth dropped open. The teachers who had been whispering stared. I looked at Oski. Her eyes were wide, her mouth slightly open. She glanced at me like she was making sure she heard him right. And in that one moment, the shame, the silence, fear that had wrapped itself around us, melted. Because someone important had seen her. Not her clothes, not her motel room, not her project's jagged edges or duct tape repairs. He saw her. Everything changed in that moment. But to understand why, you need to know what came before. Because behind that little girl standing next to a crooked cardboard rover is a whole story. One of late nights, motel lights, secondhand wires, and a mother trying to hold it all together long enough to let her daughter believe she could still reach the stars. And she almost didn't get that chance. But then, one person, just one, stepped forward and changed everything. Let me tell you how we got here. My name is Mariah Jameson, and for the past 7 months, my daughter and I have been living in room 9 at the Sunset Lodge Motel. It's the kind of place people drive past without looking twice. Peeling paint on the doors, a Coke machine that eats your quarters, and a parking lot full of potholes. But for us, it's home. At least for now. Oski is 8 years old. She has these big, watchful eyes that notice everything. She's not loud. She doesn't run around or draw attention to herself. She listens. She builds. Give her a box of broken junk, and she'll figure out how to make it move. Give her a marker, and she'll cover the back of her homework with drawings of robots and space machines and tiny astronauts floating through galaxies she's made up in her head. At night, when the cars outside quiet down, Oski lies on her stomach on the motel bed with a flashlight and her spiral notebook. She sketches machines that could clean the ocean or generate power from sand. She asks me questions I don't always know how to answer about the solar system, radiation, artificial intelligence, and where the Voyager probes are now. She's always been that way, curious, driven. She doesn't care that her shoes don't match or that she wears the same 3 outfits in rotation. She cares about building things that matter. I work nights at a gas station on Route 4 and clean rooms at the same motel where we sleep. Every dollar I make goes toward our weekly rent, food, and whatever little supplies I can get for Oski's ideas. Most of the time, it isn't enough. There are days I have to say no to snacks, to new notebooks, to the glue sticks and AA batteries she always seems to need, but she never complains. She saves scraps, plastic, wires, metal tabs, and sorts them into a shoebox she calls her parts drawer. She finds possibilities in garbage. When Oski brought home the science fair flyer 3 weeks ago, her hands were shaking. She looked up at me like she was asking for something bigger than glue or batteries. "Do you think I could enter?" she asked. I smiled. I said yes before I had any idea how I'd make it work. She started building the next day. Her idea was simple but bold. A Mars rover made from trash that could turn waste into fuel. Because astronauts shouldn't have to bring fuel with them, she told me. They could make it right there using what they have. We didn't have money for a kit. She didn't ask for one. She scavenged parts from an old fan behind the motel dumpster. She stripped wires from a busted radio someone had left in the laundry room. I found some cardboard at work. One of the motel guests gave her a roll of duct tape when they saw her working in the parking lot. Slowly, it came together. Oski's hands were covered in glue and ink. Her arms had little red scratches from pulling apart wires. She was completely focused. It was the happiest I'd seen her in months. I wanted to do more. I wanted to buy her a clean display board, a name tag, maybe even a new outfit for the fair. But when the car broke down and I had to pay for a tow, all of that slipped away. I ironed her best shirt. I combed her hair into a neat braid. I told her how proud I was. She nodded but didn't smile. She was nervous and I could see it. Not about her project, about the people, about being different, about being seen. The night before the fair, she looked up from her notebook and asked, "Do you think they'll laugh at it?" My throat tightened. I wanted to lie. I wanted to say no, but I had promised her I'd never lie about the important things. "Some people might," I said. "But you know what's amazing about your rover?" She waited. "It works." And it did. It clanked and hummed and lit up when the wires connected just right. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't polished, but it was hers. She had imagined it, built it, and tested it. She had done something real. The next morning, we carried it into the school gym in a cardboard box. The room was full of voices and poster boards and nervous parents. I helped her set up her table, then stepped back. She stood there, quiet but steady, next to her rover made of trash. She didn't look like a winner, not to the people judging her from a distance, but I knew what it had taken to get here. I knew what she had overcome just to stand in that room, and I had no idea what was about to happen next. The gym was packed. Parents milled around in clusters, some holding coffee cups, others crouched with phones, filming their kids beside bright, symmetrical poster boards. There were tables with blinking lights, baking soda volcanoes, solar-powered toy cars with chrome wheels. Every project looked clean, colorful, professional, like someone had ordered them off a science fair website. Oski's table was shoved in the corner near the utility closet. Her display board was bent at one corner, handwritten in black marker with small, careful letters. Her rover sat at the center, made from cardboard and soda cans, copper wire and duct tape. It wasn't shiny. It didn't have lights, but it moved. Slowly, awkwardly, but it moved. She stood beside it with her hands behind her back, waiting. I stayed near the bleachers, pretending to scroll through my phone, watching her like a hawk. She scanned the crowd with wide eyes. Her shoulders were stiff, her mouth tight. Every so often, she'd whisper a line from her presentation under her breath. The judges made their rounds. They were 3 people, a man in a maroon sweater, a younger woman in heels, and an older man in a gray blazer who seemed to be leading the group. His name tag read Mr. Penrose. He didn't smile. He took notes quickly, barely looking up as students explained their work. The kids with polished displays stood taller as he approached. Oski shrank. They reached her table near the end of their loop. Mr. Penrose stepped forward, arms crossed, scanning the display board. His eyes landed on the rover. He didn't greet her. "What exactly is this?" he asked. Oski cleared her throat. "It's a Mars rover that recycles trash into fuel, so astronauts don't have to bring their own—" He cut her off with a short huff through his nose. "This looks like trash." The words hit the air like a slap. Oski's face froze. Her eyes flicked toward me. I didn't move. Mr. Penrose turned to the younger judge, not even lowering his voice. "Is this from a kit?" "No," Oski said quietly. "I made it myself." "That explains it," he muttered. He reached out and nudged one of the wheels with a finger. "It's falling apart." A teacher nearby leaned toward another and whispered. She didn't realize I could hear. "She's the one from that motel, right?" The other teacher laughed under her breath. "Makes sense." Oski heard it too. I saw her shoulders twitch. She took a tiny step back, almost behind her table. My fists clenched, but I stayed still. I knew what would happen if I made a scene. They'd say I was emotional, that I was setting a bad example, that I was just proving a stereotype. I'd lived that before. This wasn't about me. This was about her. She didn't cry. She didn't run. She just looked down at her shoes and stared at them like they could take her somewhere else. The judges left without a thank you. Mr. Penrose didn't even mark anything on his clipboard. They moved on to a project involving a mechanical arm with a glowing blue button. I walked over to Oski. She didn't look up. "You okay?" I asked softly. She nodded. Her chin trembled, but she didn't speak. Her hands were clenched at her sides. "You want to go home?" She hesitated, then shook her head no. I wanted to lift her into my arms and carry her out of there. I wanted to scream that she built something real, that she was 8 years old and had figured out how to simulate energy conversion with things people had thrown away, that she didn't need a $200 kit to create something smart. But I didn't say any of that. She stayed by her table. Her face was calm, but I could see it. She was humiliated. She had walked in, hopeful, and they made her feel like she didn't belong. I crouched beside her and whispered, "Your project is smart. It's powerful. It's yours. They can't see that, but I do." Oski looked at me for a long moment. Then she stood up a little straighter. She opened her notebook and started flipping through the pages. She checked the wires on her rover, adjusted the front wheel, and turned the switch to test the little battery motor again. It whirred faintly. She nodded to herself. She wasn't doing it for the judges anymore. She was doing it for herself. That moment, the quiet way she took control again, the way she kept standing there after they tried to shrink her, that was the beginning of something. We just didn't know yet who else had been watching. Oski stayed by her table long after the judges moved on. Her classmates laughed and posed for pictures with ribbons already clipped to their boards. Teachers walked by, smiling at the shinier projects. No one returned to our corner. I stood just close enough to see her, but far enough to give her space. She kept flipping through her notebook, adjusting wires, testing the little switch on the back of the rover. The motor buzzed every few tries, soft and inconsistent. It wasn't perfect, but she never expected perfect. She just wanted it to work well enough to prove the idea. After a while, she glanced up at me. I walked over and crouched down beside her table. "We can leave if you want," I said. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes were on the wheels. "Does it matter?" she asked. "It matters to me." I didn't win. I looked at her, really looked at her. There was no tantrum, no tears, just a tired, quiet ache in her voice that I had never heard from her before. That ache broke something open inside me. "You made something out of nothing," I said, "out of wires and cardboard and whatever you could find. You came up with an idea that people twice your age wouldn't even think of, and you didn't give up when they ignored you." She bit her lip. "They didn't even ask me how it works." "I know. They just saw what it looked like." I reached into her backpack and pulled out the apple I had packed that morning. I handed it to her, and she took a bite like she hadn't eaten all day. Her hands were smudged with ink and dirt. Her braid had come a little undone. She looked tired, but not defeated. "I don't want to leave yet," she said after a moment. "Okay," I said. She picked up her notebook again and started sketching. A new idea, a new version, something she could improve. That's how her mind worked. She always moved forward. A few minutes passed. Then I noticed him. A tall man in a suit walked in through the side door of the gym. He wasn't a teacher or a parent. He walked with purpose, his eyes scanning the room. He wore a name badge clipped to his chest and carried a black leather folder under one arm. At first, I didn't think he was looking for us. People like that didn't usually walk in our direction. But he moved steadily through the rows of tables, passing projects that had drawn crowds earlier. He didn't stop. His eyes landed on Oski's table, and he walked straight toward her. She didn't see him until he was standing right in front of her. "Are you the one who built this?" he asked. Oski looked up. "Yes," he smiled. "I'm Dr. Neil Farrow. I work with NASA." She blinked. "NASA?" "That's right. I came here today to scout for a regional youth program we support. I heard someone at the front talking about a little girl who built a trash-fueled Mars rover. I had to see it for myself." She glanced at me again, unsure. Dr. Farrow continued, "Can you walk me through how it works?" Oski hesitated. Then she nodded. She turned on the motor and showed him the compartments where she had tried to simulate trash being converted into fuel. She explained the energy loop she had modeled using batteries and a solar panel she found behind the motel. Her voice grew steadier with each word. He listened. Really listened. He asked follow-up questions. He took notes. When she finished, he looked at her and said, "This is brilliant work. You've thought through things even some adults overlook." She looked stunned. He turned to me and asked, "Would you mind if I spoke to her privately for a moment?" I nodded slowly, still trying to catch up to what was happening. He knelt down beside her, his voice low but kind. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard words like program, mentorship, innovation lab in Washington. Oski's eyes widened. After a few minutes, he stood and handed me his card. "We'd love to get her connected with a program that nurtures young minds like hers. I think she's someone we'll be hearing from in the future." Oski clutched her notebook to her chest. She looked at me with wonder, like the world had just cracked open and shown her a new piece of sky. And that was when I knew. The moment she chose to stay, to keep standing in the shadow of judgment, was the moment everything changed. After Dr. Farrow handed me his card, everything around us seemed to fall away. The chatter of the other parents, the hum of fluorescent lights, the crinkling sound of juice boxes, it all faded. For the first time all day, I saw Oski smile. Not because someone told her to or because she was trying to be brave, but because something inside her had been lit up. She clutched her notebook against her chest as if it were the most valuable thing she owned. Dr. Farrow stood beside her, pointing to a spot in the back of the rover where one of her makeshift circuits connected. She began explaining her idea again, but this time it was different. She wasn't trying to prove herself. She was sharing something she loved with someone who truly understood. The teachers who had whispered earlier were suddenly paying attention. The one who had laughed now stood frozen, arms crossed, her expression blank. Mr. Penrose, the judge who called Oski's project trash, made a show of pretending to study another board. His hands twitched as he flipped the edge of a clipboard. Dr. Farrow straightened up and spoke just loud enough for people around us to hear. "This is the kind of thinking we need in the future. Resourcefulness, vision, a sense of purpose beyond polish." He turned to Oski. "Do you know how many scientists started just like this? With scraps, with what they had, with ideas that sounded strange to everyone else at first." She looked up at him. "So, it's not dumb?" He smiled. "It's brilliant." Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. She nodded slowly, and I knew she would remember those words for the rest of her life. Dr. Farrow handed me a folder. Inside were program details for something called the Young Innovators Lab, a partnership between NASA and local schools to mentor students from underserved backgrounds. They offered access to equipment, weekend workshops, and virtual lab sessions with real engineers. Oski would be one of only a handful of students considered for early entry. "She's already done something exceptional," he said. "We'd just be giving her more tools to go further." I wanted to respond, to say thank you in a way that could carry everything I felt, but I couldn't speak for a second. I had spent so long preparing for disappointment, for rejection, for things not working out. This moment felt like stepping out into the sun after months of cold. It was hard to believe it was real. Oski leaned into me. I wrapped my arm around her and held her tight. Then something else happened. A woman from the local news station who had been covering the event came over. She had seen Dr. Farrow talking to Oski and asked for a quick interview. She crouched to Oski's height and asked, "What made you want to build something that runs on trash?" Oski looked at her notebook, then back at the camera. "I live in a place where we see a lot of trash, but I don't think it means things are broken forever. I think if you look hard enough, you can turn trash into something good. You can make it work, just like people." The reporter blinked, clearly moved. She smiled and said, "Thank you, Oski." "That's a beautiful answer." I looked around the gym again. The space didn't feel as heavy anymore. People were watching, yes, but not with judgment, with curiosity, with respect. Some of the same kids who had passed by her table earlier without stopping were now inching closer, pointing at the rover and whispering. After the crowd thinned and the projects were being packed away, Oski turned to me. "Do you think he really meant it?" she asked. "That it's good enough?" I crouched down beside her and looked her in the eyes. "No," I said. "He didn't say it's good enough. He said it's brilliant. And he was right." Her hand tightened around mine. That night, back in our motel room, Oski laid her notebook on the bed and opened a new page. She started sketching a new design, a cleaner energy converter with better materials, labeled with arrows and notes. Her face was calm and focused. She didn't talk much. She didn't need to. Something had shifted in her. She had gone from a girl trying to be taken seriously to a girl who knew her place in the world had nothing to do with what others thought. She had seen what belief could look like. She had felt it. And now, she was building from it. That night, after we got back to the motel, Oski sat cross-legged on the bed, scribbling notes in her spiral notebook with the same marker-stained fingers that had built her rover. The light from the bedside lamp hit her face in just the right way, and I couldn't stop staring at her. She looked older, not because of age or size, but because something inside her had changed. She looked like a girl who knew she mattered. She didn't ask for dinner. She didn't ask to watch cartoons or scroll through pictures from the fair. She sat quietly, drawing, erasing, reworking her designs with a focus I'd only ever seen in adults, trying to prove something. But she wasn't trying to prove anything now. She was planning, dreaming, moving forward. I sat at the foot of the bed, holding the NASA folder Dr. Farrow had given me. I read through the details again, orientation dates, Zoom links, a list of mentors, lab schedules, even scholarships. It felt like we had stepped into someone else's world, a world where doors actually opened, a world where people didn't just see where you came from, but what you could become. Oski looked up from her notebook. "Do you think I can really work for NASA one day?" I put the folder down and looked her straight in the eyes. "I don't think it. I know it." She smiled, small at first, then full and proud. That smile stayed with me all night. Later, after she fell asleep beside me, still holding her notebook like a stuffed animal, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I thought about everything we had been through, the missed meals, the eviction, the mornings where she wore the same clothes because it was all we had, the nights I cried in the bathroom so she wouldn't hear. I thought about every time I worried I wasn't enough for her. But that day, at the science fair, she didn't need me to fix anything. She didn't need me to protect her from the whispers or correct the judge. She needed me to believe in her, to stand beside her, and to let her keep going. She did the rest on her own. That was the lesson. Not just for me, but for anyone listening. Children don't need perfection. They don't need polished tools or fancy clothes or a big house to feel worthy. They need someone to see them, to believe them when they say they have an idea, and to step back just enough so they can rise on their own. I had spent so long trying to protect Oski from how ugly the world can be that I almost missed how strong she already was. Not angry, not loud, quietly relentless. She didn't fold when they mocked her. She didn't give up when the judges ignored her. She stayed. She kept standing next to her project. She stayed with her truth until someone important saw it too. The next week, we got a call from the school. They wanted to feature Oski in the district newsletter. They had seen the news clip. They wanted a photo of her rover. I said yes. Then I asked if they had space in the school library where she could work on her new design after hours. They said they'd get back to me. 2 days later, they gave her a desk and a drawer of her own. Things didn't magically change overnight. We were still in the motel. I still worked the night shift. But now, there was a path. There was a plan. There were people who saw Oski as something more than a motel kid with glue-stained fingers. She had become a girl with a future, and I will never forget the way that happened. It didn't come from an award or a prize. It came from courage. The kind you don't always see from the outside, the kind that says, "I built this, I believe in it, I believe in me." The world tried to tell my daughter she was nothing. She proved them wrong. Now, when people ask me what happened at that science fair, I don't talk about the judge or the teachers or the unfairness. I tell them what really mattered. A little girl stood beside a wobbly cardboard rover, and someone from NASA saw a rocket in her hands. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of someone who's ever been overlooked, underestimated, or made to feel like they didn't belong, share it. Because someone out there needs to hear this. Someone out there needs to be reminded that where you come from doesn't define how far you can go. If you believe in kids like Oski, kids with big dreams and rough starts, give this video a like. It helps us keep sharing stories that matter. Drop a comment below and tell me what this story meant to you, or share your own. I read everyone, and I'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. There's more to come. More real stories, more voices that deserve to be heard. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next one.